Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So I've been having so much fun with the graduated peyote, the Hematite Heaven ring, sort of reintroducing that ring after all these years, that I thought, well, let's do a little more graduated peyote because it's fun. So I pulled out the flat Cellini bracelet and I thought, well, let's just take one of the bumps and make a ring. Now that's nothing new, it's been done before, but I haven't done it before. So I thought it was time to just add a ring because I think this looks so pretty together. So here's the ring. A couple of colors. Use the Hematite Heaven colors, of course, and I love this too. I used all seed beads in 3mm fire polish and 3mm Rondelles, and on the back I used those Toho Aikos to give the band some nice, like a nice rigid feel. So it's a nice ring, slides on and off easily, hasn't stretched out, really a lot of fun to make and so easy. So I'm just going to clear this off. We're going to get a materials list going and we'll get started making this ring. As usual, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my channel and you enjoy my tutorials. And if you really enjoy them, ring the bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. All right, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, let's get a materials list going. So you need two 11-ohs, two different colors. One is the main color and one is the contrasting color. So the contrasting color would be the green one, and of course the silver is the background color. You need an 8/0 seed bead, a 3mm bead of some kind. I think a round or a rondelle works best here. You have an optional Delica or Aiko bead, and that's what I did on the back of the band here, just for comfort. I've got a stop bead, size 10 beading needle, and for this one I used Wildfire thread, and I used the green, and it worked out really well. I like Wildfire for this. It's a nice, a little thicker thread as far as as far as I'm concerned. All right, so don't forget to check the description box below the video for all colors, size, shapes, amounts of beads, links to bead websites, any additional information that I might have for you down there. So I'm going to curl this off and we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. So thread your needle with about 5.5 feet of thread. That will do about a size 8, 8.5 ring. Mine's pretty big. And do the whole thing without you having to add thread. So thread about, if you can do it, 5.5 to 6 feet of thread. Put a stop bead on just about in the center. Of course, it's going to be a little bit longer on the needle side, which I want because you have the tail, coming through the through the eye of the needle. All right, so you want a little bit longer on the needle side than the other side. So I've picked up and dropped down to my stop bead, 2 11-ohs in the silver, 2 of the cobalt, 2 of the silver, 2 of the 8-ohs, and 2 of my 3mm. So the rondelle or the hematite bead or any round bead. Right, so this is what I have. So now I'm going to set you up to get you on the diagonal. So we're going to pick up an 8/0. I'm going to skip the bottom bead. Let me pull in a little bit more and go through the next bead. So like that. I'm just going to put my finger on it to hold it steady. And then this is what I have. Just like that. I'm going to pick up a 3mm. I'm exiting this 3, going to skip the next 8/0 and sew through the following 8/0. Like that. I'm going to pick up an 8/0. I'm exiting this 8/0. I'm going to skip this little silver 11/0 and sew through the next one. Like that. I'm going to pick up the silver 11/0. Exiting this 11/0, I'm going to sew through I'm going to skip the next cobalt and sew through the following cobalt 11/0. And just hold your finger on it and give it a little pull so everybody stays even. The first round is always so hard, to get everything straight. So then I'm going to pick up a blue 11-0, so the cobalt, exiting this cobalt, skipping the silver, and sewing through the last bead, which is a silver 11-0. Pop that through, and then I'm just going to give this a little pull, and I'm going to straighten my beads out so you can see what it looks like. And I'm going to pull in pretty tight. Here, actually, I'll hold it in my hand and show you the slant on this. So if you see, we're already starting to do the slant. So here's my 8-0 on the bottom. These 3 are slanting, these 3 are slanting, these 3 are slanting, and so are these 3. Now we're going to come down. So I just hold my piece always. I always hold it with the stop bead on the top. I don't flip it or anything. This is just, how I do it. So now that we have the slant, sort of the base set up, we're just going to continue doing peyote with the different size beads and just continue these beads all in a row, slanting in a row. So every time you're sewing down from the stop bead, you're going to pick up the bead that you would be sewing into. So if you see my thread is coming out of, let me move my stop bead. See, my thread is coming out of that top silver bead. So my next bead is going to be sewing, I'm going to be sewing into the blue. So I'm going to pick up the blue and I'm going to sew into the blue bead. And that's just going to keep those blue on the diagonal. So the next bead that I would be sewing into was this silver one here. So I'm picking up a silver. I'm going to sew through the silver. Like that. The next bead I'd be sewing into is this blue 8-0. So I picked up a blue 8-0, sewing through the blue 8-0. The next bead I'd be sewing into is the 3mm. So picking up the 3, sewing into the next 3mm. Let's give it a little pull. See, do you see how everybody's staying right, in line on a slant? It's just what you want. My last bead here is this little blue 8-0, picking up an 8-0, sewing through that 8-0. Okay. Let me hold it and give it a pull. I'm keeping it pretty flat right now because I want, I really want you to see everything. So this is what we have so far. Everybody's in a slanted row. And that, if that's what you have, you're perfect. So get that done and then come back and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So I just want to give you the lay of the land. So when you look at the ring and you look at the piece we have so far, this 8-0, 3mm, and 8-0 group right here is the center of our ring. These seed beads is this side going this way. So we have to duplicate this side over here. All right, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to do what I call is like a pattern repeat. So I'm going to, this first silver bead right here that's coming out, where the stop bead is coming out of, I'm going to pick up that silver bead. And I'm going to just place it on the bottom. So I'm exiting here, I'm just going to sew up to this 8-0. So I'm just putting that into place. Okay, so now for the rest of the row, when I'm sewing towards the stop bead, I'm going to pick up the bead I'm exiting. So I'm exiting an 8-0, picking up an 8-0, sewing through the 3mm. Exiting a 3mm, picking up a 3mm, sewing through the 8-0. Exiting an 8-0, picking up an 8-0, sewing through the silver. Exiting the silver, picking up a silver, sewing through the cobalt. Okay, so just get that row done and then come on back and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So when we're going back down away from the stop bead, we're going to pick up the bead we're sewing into. So I'm going to be sewing into the silver, so I'm going to pick up a silver, sew into the silver. I'm going to be sewing into this 8-0. I'm going to pick up the 8-0. I'm going to sew into the 8-0. I'm going to be sewing into this next 3mm, so pick up a 3mm, sew through the next 3mm, sewing into an 8/0. So I'm picking up an 8/0, sewing through the next one. I'm going to be sewing into this silver, picking up a silver, sewing into the silver. Okay, so I'm just going to take this step by step for now. So get that done and then we'll continue. So going back up again, but first we have to put on our pattern repeat. So the next bead over is this blue one. I'm going to pick up a blue. I'm going to sew through the next silver bead. And when I put that on, do you see how when I look at the top here, it's starting to mimic the top. So I have a blue one on. Now I'm exiting the silver, so I'm going to pick up a silver and sew through the next 8/0. I'm exiting the 8/0, so I'm going to pick up an 8/0 and I'm going to sew through the 3mm. I'm exiting the 3mm, I'm going to pick up a 3mm and sew through the 8/0. I'm exiting the 8/0, I'm going to pick up an 8/0, I'm going to sew through the silver, the top. Give that a little pull. That's what it looks like. See how we're all slanty? All right, let's go back. Let's go down again. So remember, when we're going away from the stop bead, we're going to pick up the bead we're sewing into. So picking up an 8/0, because I'm going to be sewing into this 8/0 right here. Picking up a 3mm, sew through the 3mm. Picking up an 8/0, sewing into the 8/0. Picking up a silver 11/0, sew into the silver 11/0, and picking up a cobalt and sewing into the cobalt. So you see how it's mimicking the other side? All right, so get that done and come on back and we'll keep going. Okay, so if you see up at the top we have silver, cobalt, silver. So silver, cobalt. Now I need to just place my silver bead on. Right there. Now every bead I'm going to pick up is the one I'm exiting. So I'm going to pick up a cobalt, I'm going to sew through the silver. I'm going to pick up a silver, I'm going to sew through the 8/0. I'm going to pick up an 8/0 because it's the bead I'm exiting, and I'm going to sew through the 3mm. I'm going to pick up a 3mm and I'm going to sew through this 8/0. So that's the last bead in my row. Give that a little pull. You don't have to pull super tight, just a little pull. And this is what I have. Okay, so get that done and then we'll continue. Okay, so let's turn around. So remember, when we're going away from the stop bead, we're picking up the bead we're sewing into. So picking up a 3mm, sewing into the 3mm. Picking up an 8/0, sewing into the 8/0. Picking up the silver 11/0, sew into the silver 11/0. Picking up a cobalt 11/0, sew into the cobalt 11/0. And now picking up a silver, sew into the silver. Okay, so this is what I have. So do you see how my sides are all the same? I have 2 here, 2 here, 4 here, 4 here. I have 3, 6 here, 6 here, and so on. So what we're aiming for is to get 10 beads of each color down the line. So we already have 10 of our 3mm. So we're just going to keep adding beads until we grow it, until we have 10 beads on. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other side. So at this point, you don't have to place any beads anymore, to repeat the pattern, because that part of the pattern repeat is done. So we're just going to pick up an 11/0, the silver 11/0. At this point, I just want to make sure I get that nice stripe down the side. See that sort of the stripe of color in between the silver beads. So pick up an 11/0, sew through the next 11/0. Now we're going to do the same rule that we did before. We're going to pick up the bead we're exiting. So I'm exiting the silver 11/0. I'm going to go through actually I don't like that big chunky one. So you're just going to pick up a silver 11/0 and go through the cobalt one. But I want to take that one off because It's a little bit wonky. Okay, so pick up a silver 11-0, sew through the cobalt. So it's the one I was coming out of. It was coming out of the silver, so I picked up a silver. So I'm exiting the cobalt, going to sew through the next silver. Exiting the silver, going to sew through the next 8-0. Exiting the 8-0, I'm going to pick up an 8-0 and sew through the 3mm at the top. Giving that a little pull. So when you pull and push inward like that, look at that curve we're getting. It's so cool. All right, so now we're going to turn around. Or not turn around, we're just going to go down again. So when we're sewing away from the stop bead, we're picking up the bead that we're sewing into. So picking up an 8-0, sewing through the next 8-0. Picking up a silver 11-0, sewing through the next silver 11-0. Picking up a cobalt, sewing through the next sticking out bead, which is a cobalt. Picking up an 11-0, sew through the next sticking out bead, which is the silver. And it's starting to curve in a lot. Picking up the silver, sewing through our last silver. Okay, so I'm just going to let you get to this point, and then come on back and we'll continue. Okay, let's continue. So we're going back up, so we're picking up the silver 11-0. I'm going to put that one on. Pick up another silver. So we're picking up the bead we're exiting. Put that one on. Picking up another silver, sewing through the cobalt. Picking up a cobalt, sewing through the silver. Picking up a silver, sewing through the 8-0. Go back down, picking up a silver. So we're going to be sewing, picking up the color we're sewing into. So picking up a silver, sew into the silver. Pick up a cobalt, sew into the cobalt. Pick up a silver, sew into the silver. Pick up a silver, sew into the next silver. Pick up a silver, sew into the next silver. So you see how we're growing each line? All right, so I'm just going to turn around, picking up a silver, I'm going to sew through the next silver. Pick up silver, sew through the next silver. Picking up a silver, sewing through the next silver. Silver, through the cobalt. Cobalt, through the silver. Going a little faster now. Turning around, picking up a cobalt because we're picking up the bead we're sewing into. So we're going to sew into the cobalt, so I'm putting on a cobalt. Now the rest are going to be silver. Turn around, go back up. Silver, 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 and a silver. See how we're taking shape? Turning around, so just sewing through the bead the bead you're sewing into. So we're just all going to be silver for the rest of this part of the ring. So I'm just putting a silver everywhere, through each sticking out silver, because we're done with the pattern. Now this is sort of doing the background, I guess you can call it. Okay. So you can continue that for a little bit. What I like to do at this point is I like to just stop and get this much of the other side done, and then I kind of go back and forth. But that's up to you. And I'm going to do it that way so I can show, so we can work on the other side together a little bit, and then I'll show you where I transition to the Delicas if you want to do that as well. All right, so get to this point and then come on back, and we'll just take the stop bead off and we'll just get started on the other side. Okay, we're back. So I've taken off my stop bead and I've threaded the thread. I'm just going to flip it over this way just so I can work with my right hand. Okay, so here I'm going to give it a nice pull. Don't pull too tight, you don't want to break your thread. Sometimes I pull too tight. All right, so at this point, I already have my pattern repeat down, right? So I'm going to, at the bottom, so I'm just going to pick up a silver, sew through the silver. Picking up a silver, sewing through the cobalt. So I'm picking up the bead, you know I'm exiting, picking up a cobalt, sewing through the silver, picking up a silver, sewing through the 8-0, grab my 8-0s, pick up an 8-0, sew through very top one, which is your 3mm, and if you can pull, but you want to pull and like pull these beads down a little bit so they're all sitting on top of each other. Look how pretty that looks. All right, so we're going down now. So we're going to pick up an 8-0, sew through this 8-0. So remember, we're sewing into the bead. We're picking up the bead we're sewing into. 11-0, through the 11-0, 8-0, through the 8-0. You got it. And as you pull, you feel it. It's kind of wrapping itself around your finger. 11-0, through the silver 11-0, another silver for this one. Going back up. Just going a little faster now. We've done so much of it, but I just want to get you, sort of on the road here. So up, silver, through the silver, silver through the next silver, pick up a silver, sew through the cobalt, pick up a cobalt, sew through the next silver, pick up a silver, sew through the next 8-0. Okay, I know I'm going a little fast, so I'm just going to let you get to this point and then we'll just finish up the front in a minute. Going down, silver, into the silver, cobalt, so we're sewing, we're picking up the bead we're sewing into, cobalt into the cobalt, silver into the silver, silver into the silver, silver into the silver, go back up, silver into the silver, silver into the next silver, silver into the next silver, oops, another silver into the cobalt, cobalt into the silver. It's not looking pretty. Let's go down. Cobalt, sewing, picking up the bead you're sewing into. So cobalt into cobalt, and then all silvers. Let's do that a little faster. Okay, should we go back up one more time? We'll go back up. So, silver to the silver, silver into the silver, one more time, silver into the cobalt. So see, we have both of our stripes on now. So if I put it on my finger like that, do you see what we've got? We've got our pretty little bump going there. So this is what we have so far. So at this point, you're just going to continue on with your silver 11-0s, and you're going to do it for, I don't know, let's see, how far did I go? I went enough to cover, because I like the way the silver 11-0s look, so I did enough to cover like this part of my finger, and then I put the Delicas on just for comfort, because I think they're more comfortable. So you can, I can't really tell you how many beads to put on, but just, go around until you're about here and there, so it, it covers like that. And then if you want, you can put the Delicas on, or you can just continue with the 11-0s. But I think the Delicas kind of make it a little easier to get on and off, because these silver beads are matte, so they're, and the Delicas are much more even. All right, so get that done to where your ring is, the right length, and then meet me back here and we will zip it up. All right, see you in a few. Okay, so back for a second, because I guess I just wanted to do the transition with you. So just to show you, I just put a number of the seed beads on to cover my finger like I showed you in the last clip. I just counted the ones on the bottom and the ones here, just to make sure I had the same number, so that when I put the Delicas on, the transition, is even. I'm just going to pick up a Delica or an Aiko bead, just going to put one bead in between each sticking out bead, just, like we've been doing. Like I said, you don't have to do this. I just like the feeling of this bead better on my finger than I do the round seed bead, especially the matte seed bead that I'm using. So just keep going. And you're just going to keep doing that until you're halfway through. Do the other side, the other half, and then come on back and we'll zip it up. Okay, we're back. So I have my little edges on, and now I'm going to make it into a ring. So I'm going to zip it up. So I have 2 threads sticking out. You can sew one in and just work with the other. If it's easier, I'll just sew it in later. So you want to make sure you're in zipping mode. Oops. So that's where, when I put these 2 ends together, I have an indented bead meeting an up bead or sticking out bead, like that. So when I put them together, it just zips right up. So here's my indented bead right here. Just going to sew through the sticking out bead on the other side, like that. Then I'm going to go back to this side and sew through the sticking out bead there, and then through the sticking out bead on this side, like that. So we're just going back and forth, going through the up beads or the sticking out beads, like that, like that. See this? Which way my needle is going? I'm just going straight through the beads from side to side like a zipper. Something so satisfying about zipping up peyote. Like that. Turn it around. Okay, here we go. So I'm exiting this one. I'm going to sew through this one. So now my piece is together, but these 2 beads at the top need to be connected. So exiting right here, I'm just going to sew down through this one. And then I'm just going to sew on the diagonal. I know it's hard to see. See here, just all the way down, just to reinforce. So, just your normal peyote reinforcing. And just do that all the way down. And before you tighten this up completely, now I'm making this for a friend, so I don't know if it's going to fit me, but I'm going to try it on. Okay, well, it's a little slightly tight. I don't want to stretch it out too much, but it's not bad. So there you go. That's what it looks like when you put it on. So if you put it on and it's a little too tight, take it off, and you can have to add another couple of rows. Or if it's too big, you can take it out. So before you go crazy, completely reinforcing everything, you want to make sure that the fit is good. Like if I was making this for me, I would make it slightly bigger. All right, so let's take a look. How pretty. Oh, these are so pretty. I just love them. There you go. So here's our little flat Cellini ring. So I think that really came out cute. I think you can make it in all different colors. You could probably use a 6/0 here instead of a 3mm. It pops up a lot when you use this hematite bead, this round bead. The rondelle is a little flatter because of the shape of the bead. So really just play with all kinds of beads and see which ones you like the most for this ring. So here you go. Just to show you again, here's the bracelet, and I'll put a link down below for that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun making this and post on Facebook. The other ring, there are so many great posts. I'm going to make a whole collage of them because they came out so beautiful. All right, so take care and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.